All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's remember last week we did a conversation talking about, talking about parole conditions. Well, I think it's time to continue that conversation. In recent news about the scheduled release of Oscar Pistorius in August, it really did lead to a public outcry about the alleged unfairness of the justice system in South Africa. Some people feel that the system favours those that are in a higher standing in society than those who are not. Well, the Department of Correctional Services spokesperson, Manelisi Wolela, joins us in studio to talk about the process involved with a parole system here in South Africa. So nice to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much. Good morning to your listeners.
All right, so this is it's a big thing where a lot of South Africans do feel this way. They do feel that the justice system and parole treats some people more fairly than others, and it is not an equal system. So I suppose this is your opportunity to come in and restore our faith in that. Is it a fair system?
From where, first of all, I think as Correctional Services, we need to welcome the kind of national dialogue that is taking place around issues of parole and probation and execution of correctional services in the country. From where we're sitting, we're doing our best to make it a point that there's appropriate implementation irrespective of who you are, of what is provided. First of all, the mandate of Correctional Services is to make it a point that we implement effectively and fully decisions of our courts. And there are various provisions that are being used by courts, both in terms of the Correctional Service, the Criminal Procedure Act. And in this particular instance, we're talking about the utilization of non-custodial sentences by our courts as they deem it necessary. Then Correctional Services is responsible for implementing those. If we're looking at our South African context, we've got about 70,000 people that are outside of our facilities that are managed by us. Out of that 70,000, we have 17,000 that are there because they are probationers. They were either sent directly by courts to correctional supervision, or they were sent by courts via a very short time in our facilities to community corrections. Yeah. So those that are sentenced in terms of section 276 1H, those that are going directly to community corrections, and those that are given 1/6 of the sentence in our facilities before they go out. So those are decisions of court. And the only responsibility we have is to make it a point that within that period that they are here, that 1/6 of the sentence, we're making the interventions, we're ensuring that they're complying with the acts, with the laws, and with our regulations. And then we place them out, because those are in essence non-custodial sentences meted out against people. In South Africa, we have those that are sentenced in terms of section 2761I. We have 3,423 on a daily basis in South Africa. And therefore, if you can just make a calculation out of that number, how many may be released on a daily basis is quite a huge number of people. Yeah. But unfortunately, the bulk of those people don't get the public attention that some get.
Look, I mean, the reality is that what has happened, let's just take the Oscar Pistorius situation, is completely above board. I mean, this is the law. This is the way it is. He's served 1/6 of his sentence. It hasn't exceeded 5 years, hence he's entitled to parole. But I think a lot of people are I think it's an emotional case where people are just upset by this, that somebody can, kill another individual and within 10 months be a free man. But is he going to be a free man? When we talk about parole, let's talk about his life once he's out. You talk about these 17,000 people on parole. How do you manage them? What happens? What are their lives like out of jail?
Okay, clarity as well is that those that are on parole are those that we have managed and placed them in terms of Correctional Services Act. Those that are referred directly to community corrections, we call them probationers.
Okay.
They may serve 1/6, they may serve 1/4 of their sentence as the court may decide. But what is important is that those people have not completed their sentences. They will complete their sentences under community corrections, monitored by our officials. And we have various categories or levels of risk for those. Those that have just been released are regarded as high risk, and they get visited, they are monitored, they are on house arrest for 23 hours out of 24 hours, and over time, every 6 months, we keep on evaluating how they are performing under those conditions, and we keep on reclassifying them over their stay until they complete their sentences.
Yeah.
So in this particular instance, the person we're talking about, Oscar, is not a parolee, is a probationer, because it is referred to non-custodial sentence by court.
Who will be finishing his sentence at home. He falls under these rules of he has to be indoors 20, what is it? House arrest 23
I'm not making
24.
specific references to him, but I'm saying there are about 5 categories of parolees and probationers.
Yeah.
So he's a parolee, but he's going to go through all those stages, but he's going to complete his sentence under community corrections monitored. At first, some of them, those that are high risk, are visited up to 8 times monitored per month by our officials at random times to check whether they're complying or not. And over time, it gets relaxed. They may even be visited once in 2 months later on when they are reclassified.
Yeah. Okay, so just finally, one of the other issues we spoke about was medical parole. And we've seen some cases where it's been too late. For instance, George Luca dying in custody, although he'd been trying for a while to get his medical parole authorized. Clive Derby-Lewis has just gotten his medical parole authorized. What, again, is the rules for that? How does that work?
I think something that comes out very clearly here is that there is a need for a public education campaign, which has got to be run by the criminal justice system collectively. Because, for example, the case of Luca was not asking for medical parole. Remand detainees are managed by justice. The decisions are made by courts in terms of their placement outside our facility, and that's not medical parole. In this particular instance, Correctional Services had submitted an application, if you remember. We processed that application, and which was rejected by court. And in other instances, you may find that someone may be eligible for medical parole placement. But the law also expects of us to assess the conditions and the support system at home. In some instances, you find that people have absolutely no support at home. For example, if we can look at the cases that we've had recently, we had about 87 people that could not be placed on medical parole because there's absolutely no support. And therefore, what the law says must be achieved by taking them to put them in families that cannot even cater for them would be tantamount to flouting the provisions of the law, which says they need to die consolatory and in a dignified way as human beings.
Yeah, indeed. Again, I may have another. May I ask another question? I'm going to ask my director because I know we're running against time here. But I think what's important as well. We've touched on medical parole. We've touched on the parole of somebody who's up for it, who's according to South African law. Let's talk about awaiting trial prisoners. I mean, you've got a guy like, again, I bring up Oscar Pistorius, who has, in this amount of time, he has gone through the justice system, he has served his time, and he's due for release in about 2 months' time, yet there are still thousands upon thousands of people waiting in our prisons for a trial. I mean, the longest one, which I'm reading here, there's a guy who was just released, I think it was earlier this year, after waiting 8 years for his day in court. 8 years he spent languishing in jail. Now, again, I ask you that same question. Because of a media interest in a story, this will get you somewhere faster than any other normal person who's awaiting trial for 8 years. What's going on there with awaiting trial?
First of all, I think we need to acknowledge that is one of our serious concerns also, the time that is spent by offenders in our awaiting trial persons in our facilities. And as a result, we have a project that we are driving together with the Department of Justice and Police to make it a point that all those that have served close to 2 years are periodically presented to courts by Correctional Services for consideration of their cases and are evaluated on an ongoing basis to eliminate that. And we're making progress over the past few years. We have reduced that number by about 62 of those that are serving more than 2 years in our facilities. But we need also to appreciate the complexity of dealing with these cases. In some instances, witnesses pass on. In some instances, people change their lawyers almost every time they go to court. They fire their lawyers every time they go to court. So there are a plethora of factors that are making the functioning of the criminal justice system very difficult. Okay. But we're paying attention to those cases because they are unacceptable as far as
let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for giving us a bit of clarity on all of this. But I do think the awaiting trial is a massive issue. 8 years awaiting trial. Oscar Pistorius, within 2.5 years, has served his sentence, has been to court, and is basically walking out in 2 months' time. So, yeah, there you go. That was the spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services, Manelisi Wolela, parole in South Africa. That, of course, was the topic of this conversation. Let's take a break.